Every human being is a victim of their own surroundings on a local and global level. A human being is a product of the information they receive. Human beings both receive and send information. Each human being is an echo chamber. Every human being has a sphere of influence, may that be on a biological, electrical, or chemical level. That influence is a product of the sum total of what their surroundings dictate. That dictation is dependent on the senses available to the human being. Regardless of the geographical location of the human being, their experience is the same. Each human being is educated by the input from surrounding sentient beings. In the societies each human being is designated by nature, dictates the core system of beliefs that human being will be expected to operate in. That operation is variable, which dictates the human being's experience of living, their input variables, and their output variables. Every human being has an agenda, which is dictated by their inputs from their spheres of influence.
I'm a believer in a new world. I believe in a new world order. I want to see one world. And I want to see one people. But I want to see it under a constitutional process. I want to see it come into being under something like this document, which is so precious, which we have allowed people to take from us and get away from us. I will support a new world order in all of its beauty and all of its hopeful promises, but I want it to be a constitutional process. It must be, or I won't support it worth a damn.
Coming to the United Nations, speaking to staff, delegates, and others, and simply asking the international community to look over our shoulders, to be part of an extraordinary adventure, the end of which could be verification, absolute, that the human race is not alone, seemed to me, just in the spirit of the thing, to fall within the purview of the UN mandate and the UN Charter. Then Mohammed, serendipitously, brings out the specific resolution, 33/426. And now we know there is a legal framework. So I am very encouraged that after what you will see this afternoon, and what others will see, and what they will see through the videotapes that are being made, that we will go forward with a spirit of inquiry and verification. And if what we think is there, then truly we will have before us a new world order of the first magnitude.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Today on Cosmic Disclosure, we have a very special guest, Sergeant Clifford Stone.
I firmly do not believe things just happen. Things happen for a purpose, whether we know that there was a purpose or not. Within the universe, everything has a meaning, a time and a place to fall in place. Nothing is an accident. You can't keep secrets from them. Yes, they can definitely pick up on the inner, real you. And when they're going through the process of deciding who they're going to follow throughout life, this is exactly what they're doing. You may not be telling something factual, but when that thought transfer is going through, it's what you truly believe to be the truth. And I think no one's ever pointed that out.
So they have the ability to manipulate how your choices?
Oh, absolutely. But the one thing they can't do, make you do something that you feel is immoral or something that is wrong. I saw the beings as little children, and I saw Corona as he really looked. That's when it took on a whole new reality. That's actually when I really realized at that time, you may not be telling something factual, You can't keep secrets from them. Yes, they can definitely pick up on the inner, real you.
There was something called the Eye of Orion. It used to be, in Egypt, it was the Eye of Horus, H-O-U-R-S, and the all-seeing eye. And it actually is a form. I want to describe it to you because this is a very advanced technique. We don't have time to go through all these. But if you were with me for a whole week, you'd master this. But in 3 or 4 hours, we'll do what we can do. But visualize, you know the old TV picture tubes that had like a slightly curved front, and the tubes came back like this to a rounded back? Just like the human eyeball. Actually, if you take, the eyeball is not round. It actually is a little bit curved on the front, but flat, and then it curves back like this, not to a point, but to sort of a rounded. This crystalline object actually came out from underneath Joshua tree, and it was crystal clear, translucent, and came into the house where we were, and it was sent from this sector of space. And I was told that if you go within this, you can put your consciousness within this eye, and then it magnifies your remote viewing ability and your intention to create something exponentially. Very powerful technique. And you can actually put this Eye of Orion within the Merkaba and travel and then see through it. I don't know, your powers of visualization have to kind of, go with this for a moment. So see yourself in this Merkaba, looking and gazing out through the Eye of Orion, and then intending to create change in your life, world peace, contact with these civilizations. Very powerful. These are structures and forms within consciousness. When this object came to our house, it was actually going from window to window, wanting someone to acknowledge it. Very strange experience. And so I acknowledged it. It was the wee hours of the morning. And it was quite clear to me that the sort of re-understanding some of the mythology, things that have become mythological, are actually technological conscious structures within the geometry of awareness. And so the Eye of Orion became a technique for really magnifying intent and also seeing with great clarity. But you have to center your awareness in it and expand, and you can expand the Eye of Orion with the Merkaba. The Merkaba is an energy field in consciousness, in the sacred geometry of how consciousness becomes matter.
Truth is sometimes harsh and unsettling, but it is the truth. Why build a craft that's triangular like ours? Why have a dorsal fin on it like our airplanes do? Why mark them? What's the purpose of marking them on the side? We do that. The other thing is, why would I get binary code in English? Now the craft, I have nothing to measure it. So I do my stride. I do 3 of these strides. Well, I'm getting older. That's actually 9 feet. I used to, all right, so about 9 feet, about 6.5 feet tall, triangular. What I'll call the left side, I see writing, got this stuff. I said, what is this? So they're like glyphs. They measure about 3 feet wide, 4 or 5 inches high. They go from the smooth glass to like etched into the metal somehow. On the top was a big triangle one. But that's how it was laid out in the craft. The blue is because I don't know how to do a slide. Okay, on the one circle, don't worry about that. But that's how it was laid out. Those glyphs fascinated me, along with 6,000 other things that were going on. But they did fascinate me. And when I got to them, I just thought it was pretty, unusual. I was going over them, like that. And as I went through the bottom ones, the one on top was fascinating. The one with the circle in the triangle. There's the coordinates. Yeah, this is the message said it in the binary. There's a long story. The binary would have never been out, wasn't for Linda Moulton Howe and John Burroughs. Most of them are by pyramids.
My name is Charles I. Halt. In 1991, I retired from the U.S. Air Force as a colonel. I was base commander of two large military installations, and at my time of my retirement was director of inspections directorate for the DoD Inspector General. In that capacity, I had inspection oversight of all military services and defense agencies. In 1980, I was the deputy base commander, RAF Bentwaters, the largest twin base complex in East Anglia. At the time, this was the largest tactical fighter wing in the Air Force. In late December 1980, I was called upon to investigate a very strange event, an event that was distracting our security police from their primary duties. Early on the morning of 26 December 1980, our police patrolman discovered strange lights in the forest east of the back gate at RAF Woodbridge. 3 patrolmen were dispatched to investigate. They reported a strange craft, triangular in shape, sitting on 3 legs. The craft was approximately 3 meters on a side. It had multiple lights. It rapidly maneuvered and quickly disappeared. 2 nights later at the family Christmas party, I was interrupted by the on-duty police commander. He told of strange events and said it was back. I was tasked to go out and investigate. I fully expected to find an explanation. I took 2 senior patrolmen with me, a disaster preparedness expert, and the reporting on-duty police officer. We suddenly observed a very bright red-orange object. It was oval and with a black center. It reminded me of an eye, and it appeared to be winking or blinking.
LA-based investigative filmmaker Jeremy Corbell recently released this video taken by the Navy, showing what he describes as pyramid-shaped UFOs flying over the USS Russell off the San Diego coast in July of 2019. The Pentagon has since confirmed that the video is authentic.
The priests, the adepts, and the initiates in the mystery schools, they are in control, and they are shaping the future, and that future will affect all of us. So we had better learn as much about them as we can. You cannot identify an enemy unless you know the enemy, and you cannot fight a battle if you know nothing about the battle tactics of your opponent. In secret, whatever you perceive as the state of technology in the public eye, the very cutting edge, in secret they are a minimum of 50 to 100 years ahead, to the point where science fiction is no longer fiction and hasn't been for quite some time, but is in all actuality science fact.
Hi, I'm Chris Bales, and I have a little incident that I ran into on September 27th, the year 2000.
So, Chris, I came across this. Did you draw that?
I did draw this.
Is that what it looked like?
That's as similar as what I could come up with.
The shape of the triangle that was drawn by the hunters.
We are on the threshold of the new age. And into this new age will march only one man. It is the new man. It is the illumined man. It is the man that is able to make the evolutionary jump to the level in the mystery school known as 666. It is the number of a man. It is the illumined man to the mystery schools.
You have these things. You hear things around you. Some people hear really good. Some older people don't hear really good. One of the guys in the room said the distance between the helicopter and the entity was 666 feet. You know what that is? I think most of you do. You're pretty smart people. So 666, if you look it up in different ways, it'll say different things, but it's the number of the beast. It's the devil or the Antichrist. Chapter 13, Book of Revelations in King James. This is what it said. Now, do you understand? What are the odds that it would have been 666? That's way outside the realm of probability. If you went to Las Vegas, that odds would be, I don't know, 10,000 to 1? Come on. That's bizarre. Now, there were rumors, strong rumors, that Mr. Bigelow and our government pulled out of Skinwalker Ranch because they believed that the entity was demonic. Now, Travis is super smart. Those men in the room are smart people. Why didn't anybody just say what I told you? Why? Are they going to say it next week? Are they just going to gloss it over? Or is it something about the production team that doesn't want that said? Our eyes. Another device to pick up things around us. Another detection system. If you know about the pineal gland, that really, if it's not calcified, that really can unlock many things, many abilities that most people do not understand. And look it up if you've never heard of it. As the rocket goes up into the sky, just as it's going up a little over 30 feet, this entity becomes more visible. And as it reaches that 31-foot height, the explosion happens. Now, you can say that 31 feet up in the air, they have this entity above the triangle. Now, is that there? The question, remember, I asked earlier, is that here all the time? Or does it go away? Now, if that's there all the time, is that like a listening post, a lookout for the entity in a much more advanced way? I don't know. And then, is that little ball controlled by the entity above the triangle? Was it dispatched to go screw with the helicopter at some level? You got to really think outside the box.
Southern California, 1990. Adult female drew these 3 non-humans that abducted her. She said these aliens had light brownish yellow skin. The being on the right also has a triangle inside a circle on his upper right chest. That symbol has been seen by many abductees on leotard-like uniforms of some gray beings, including Jean Robinson of Springfield, Missouri. She drew this circle around an equilateral triangle that she remembered on the left breast of her abductor's bodysuit.
To the level in the mystery school known as 666. It is the number of a man. It is the illumined man to the mystery schools, the priests, the adepts, and the initiates in the mystery schools. They are in control, and they are shaping the future, and that future will affect all of us, so we had better learn as much about them as we can. You cannot identify an enemy unless you know the enemy, and you cannot fight a battle if you know nothing about the battle tactics of your opponent.
My product is 51 times stronger than cocaine, 51 times more hallucinogenic than acid, and 51 times more explosive than ecstasy. It's like getting a personal visit from God.
The Church of Satan has declared total war on ignorance. This has often been misconstrued by mainstream media. It's not a war of race, it is a war of the intelligent versus the stupid, of predator and prey, master and slave, domination and servitude. Satan represents the powers of force in nature, and we feel that a cleansing of the idiot ideology of the pallid, incompetent Christ is in order. And so this is something that the Church of Satan is conducting on many different avenues. We're doing this through the use of what we have called aesthetic terrorism. This involves the creative use of art, music, writing, effectively what we call propaganda, the dissemination of information to influence what we call iron youth.
Now, it's easy and fun to think of Aleister Crowley as a great master magician, an occult superstar, and he certainly is in most circles. And I've got respect for the man as a master of his own destiny. But I've got a better name for you. One of the fathers of modern lesser magic would be Edward Bernays. Has anybody heard of Edward Bernays? Of course you do. Yes. He is a man that introduced his most famous uncle, Freud, to America. And he set about to implement a scientific study of the manipulation of people. He was influenced by Gustave Le Bon, Walter Lippmann, and other thinkers. And he published a book in 1928 titled Propaganda. It begins, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested largely by men we have never heard of. This is a logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. Our invisible governors are, in many cases, unaware of the identity of their fellow members in this inner cabinet. They govern us by their qualities of natural leadership, their ability to supply needed ideas, and by their key position in the social structure. Whatever attitude one chooses to take towards this condition, it remains a fact that in almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons, a trifling fraction of our 120 million, who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world." Now, in this book, he lays the groundwork for the field of public relations, or what he referred to as the new propaganda. It is a sector so important now that major figures in business, government, fashion, and entertainment, and all these powerful men and women are often afraid to make a single move without consulting one of these black magicians to decipher what the bones say about public opinion and how to manipulate it to their own advantage.
This group of techniques that came out at that time came out of Hollywood. Now, you've seen Argo? Has anyone in here seen Argo? Hands? Oh, yeah. Ben Affleck would love you guys. In Argo, Tony proposes, let's get a Hollywood location scouting crew. And Bryan Cranston laughs, or it says, the best bad idea? This is our best bad idea. It wasn't a bad idea. It was kind of a good idea. Tony knew a lot of people out in LA. He knew a lot of people in Hollywood. He knew a lot of people in the magic community. because Tony had always been interested in magic as a kid, and he paid attention to it. So we went back behind the scenes in LA to the people that design and engineer the illusions, and that is a profession of building illusions for the magicians to perform. They don't design them. The magicians are the performers. The people we were interested in were the engineers. We said, okay, you can walk an elephant out on the stage in a theater and make it disappear. We've seen it. Big box on the stage, elephant comes out, they walk him in, they close the door, they talk to you for a minute, they open the door, the elephant's gone. We wanted to know, how do you do that? I mean, of course it's a trick, but we have some people in Moscow that we would like to disappear right on the street too. And it doesn't have to be that big a box, but we want to know how to execute deception and illusion on the streets of this tough city that we were working in. And I don't think anybody in LA ever said no to us, whether we were talking about masks, whether we were talking about special effects or makeup, certainly not when we were talking about deception and illusion. What they told us is there some formulas that are just so basic. They said, when you start out, you call it an operation, we call it a performance. If you're going to have a successful performance, you have to first understand your stage. Where is your stage? What is your stage? Is your stage the sidewalk outside the American Embassy? Or is it a parking garage somewhere? What is your stage that you're performing on? Is it in the lobby of the embassy? So find your stage. Then, who's your audience? Who are you playing to? Who are you trying to fool? And you have to understand their point of view, actually their field of vision. Because some deceptions, you can walk in a circle around them and they still hold up. Some deceptions, like the elephant, you have to be sitting straight in front of it. And if you're off over here, you might start seeing, that's a little hinky. You have to be in front of it. So they said point of view is very important. So figure out your stage, figure out your audience, and then you just kind of overwhelm them with your performance. We did things called identity transformation, where we would turn you into you. We would switch people. We would take the person that had no surveillance and our person who had too much, and we would switch them. It was a way to get away from surveillance. We used masks. You probably saw a picture in the back of the room of a mask. That was one of the first ones we made. Hollywood uses twins. Well, we didn't have twins, but we could make twins. We could make triplets. We could make 8 of you, but we usually only needed 1 more extra. If you have 2 of you, then you can develop these scenarios where surveillance is very confident that they are following you, but it's not you. It's you number 2. You number 2 is taken off and is inside this bar and doing something else. That mask technology took me into the Oval Office. There's a display in this museum that shows I'm demonstrating the mask technology to the president. I'm briefing him. Eventually, I took the mask off and showed it to him, and he was impressed.
Deliberate, staged acts are very common among ritual abusers to confuse their victims. Another favorite one is alien abduction. So a lot of these cult groups stage an alien abduction, and they will stage a surgery by an alien, and then they will make the victim believe that that is what happened to them, and through torture and dissociation, they will bury the memories of the cult abuse more deeply, so that now the person sounds like, that they believe that their trauma is alien abduction. And for the victim, it works because now they have a basis for all of this fear that they have. They know that they're terrified. They know they have post-traumatic stress disorder, but now they think it's all from an alien abduction, but it was a staged alien abduction. So there's a lot of sources of disinformation within the victims.
As a cover, ritual abusers, and I'm wondering if they would go through the whole, costume thing, embed in their victims actually, to them, it's a true memory, but it's of a false situation, and that is they were not abducted by aliens, but that is what they've been implanted with, and that's the cover that the abusers can hide behind. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's extremely
common among ritual abuse survivors.
And that is not to say, and I don't know, I mean, that is not to say, I would assume, that some folks who claim to have that happened would have necessarily been victims of this, or maybe I'm wrong. Do you believe it's a 100% deal? I doubt it would be, but what do you think about that, that those who claim they may have been abductees might have very well been, unwittingly, victims of abusers?
But yeah, I think some people who believe they were abductees are ritual abuse victims.
Well, welcome to another segment of the Grassy Knoll on this August 16th, 2006. This is Viz, and we have with us a woman to whom we will refer as Maury. Her website is reflectionsinthenight.com.
Well, I was born April 30th, 1941 in Cedar City, Utah. I was absolutely an autistic child. The rat line was where the Catholic Church helped the Nazis escape. All over the world, they say they came, but they came in large numbers to South America at the end of World War II. I did a lot of stuff out of China Lake and with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. When they used me as a gray, I was with other children. Also, there were other grays there.
Now, when you're saying grays, and we'll talk about this later, you're referring to, I guess, what, to represent aliens?
Gray, UFO.
You've mentioned the grays, you mentioned the UFO hoax. Can you tell us what was all going on about that?
They had out in the Mojave Desert, and I don't know how many people knew because my memory of it was that Mrs. 𝗧𝗿𝗱𝗶𝗁 was there, and I was there, and the Nazis were there. I don't remember seeing the group from JPL, but they had. It looked like the China Lake area. It felt right. When I first heard about China Lake, I thought it was up higher in the state. I kind of knew where I was taken. I knew I was taken out in the Mojave Desert regularly. And when I saw China Lake was in the Mojave Desert, I thought, oh, how'd I miss that? They had some kind of a hangar, and it looked like they did have, the UFO, they had something. They had something that was round and would go up vertical and had flashing lights. And my guess, the Foo Fighter that they talk about,
in the Second World War?
I kind of looked it up, but I thought it was bigger than that. I would have guessed more like a helicopter that was dressed up. And they had something.
Well, and what were they doing with it? Were they making films, or?
Well, they were going to do this UFO hoax because they had a group of kids all dressed up like the Greys, and they just made something up to make you look otherworldly, and what they made up caught on. Everybody remembered that costume.
Are we thinking basically about the ET type prototype?
Yes, that's just a little naked child. They put a nylon stocking over your head to make your mouth disappear into a slit, and your ears, two holes on the side of your head, and you can't talk. And they put goggles on. I think they originally used the World War II goggles, but they may have put that down to just the goggle lenses because your eyes disappear too, and you just look like, you don't look like anything. So, and they have you naked, but you see all the original, and they were little girls. They used little girls. They kept us thin because one of the ways they control you is to starve you. But you see all those original pictures, and they're all naked. Boy, I remember being cold is what I remember. They kept us naked out there in the desert, and it's freezing cold a lot. I just really remember being cold.
Were you out there for days or weeks straight?
I have no idea because I have no idea. All the memories haven't come up on that. I don't know how much they used me. I just have some of it. Something may come up later, and I don't know.
Well, during your lifetime and during your obviously memory, we had Roswell. Can you shed any light on what we know about Roswell?
Well, I get a little upset when they say that when they say, oh, they caught the aliens in some anybody died, then I start to get up thinking one of my little friends died, you know. I don't know. They didn't care whether we died or not.
But do you believe that the whole Roswell situation was an extension of what you experienced?
Yes, I think it was the same period of time.
Well, there's no doubt, obviously, that there have been crafts that can do what we claim UFOs can do, because obviously it does happen. We've all seen things. I don't know what it means in the big picture, but obviously these anti-gravity crafts were around for some time, and I mean, you can attest to the fact too. Were they not around in the late 40s?
Yes, they started this. They started this right. Out of JPL in that area. That was started very soon. Well, I remember being there. I think 1947. I think that's about right. I think that I was about 6. I think that I felt about 6. So yeah, they were real busy out there. They had all of a sudden the Nazis were in there. They'd gotten they now controlled the group of physicists at JPL and
GHB and abductees. Now, abductees, what I mean is alien abductees. Everyone knows I'm a MUFON investigator. I followed this for decades. There was a doctor named Dr. John Mack, psychiatrist, Harvard University. Brilliant man. Brilliant psychiatrist. So he's a physician. And during his tenure at Harvard, he started to get interested in abductees. And he started to do some research and interview each one. And he did hundreds. And he wrote a series of books about it. Now, here's where I always come into the problem when I'm doing these sort of things in front of groups or at conferences. I get a very small section of the community who thinks that abductees and UFOs is crap and don't even bring it up, Dave. Then you got other people who I talk about cryptids and they say, oh, that's crap, don't talk about it, Dave. In the reality, you are an expert at what you're interested in. And what you're not interested in, many people refuse to even acknowledge it. And some of those people in the UFO community, I've said this before, when I give a talk in front of a MUFON group, sometimes the whole front row is all PhDs. Brilliant people. And when I get off stage and I usually have dinner and I get invited to dinner by these groups, they all surround me and they say, Dave, you're one of the few people who has come to the table with facts. This is nourishing. This is good. You know, let's keep talking. Very appreciative. Well, John Mack came to the table with facts. He had interviewed hundreds of these abductees and all told a very similar story. The experience, the abduction, one consistency. They'd wake up at night in their bed and they felt absolutely frozen. They couldn't move. Sound familiar? Sometimes they had loss of memory. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they could remember everything. Things that happened to them on wherever they were taken, claiming a ship. Some of the things that were done to them. But they couldn't lash out. They couldn't move. They felt like they were somehow frozen and their muscles weren't reacting. Sound familiar? So that goes back to GHB. And there seems to be some linkage there. Whether people want to acknowledge it or not, there seems to be.
If you go back in time, why Area 51 really started, you learn that it was a base hidden inside of a base, nuclear weapons, and it was all about beating Stalin at his black propaganda campaign, as I write in the book, to hoax Americans in a War of the Worlds type scenario, whereby little men who looked like aliens would get out of an aircraft and the government would go crazy about it. And then Stalin would say, look, not only do we have technology better than you, but we have a better propaganda department than you. In my book, I interview a man who worked for the Atomic Energy Commission, who tells a different story, tells the story of receiving that craft at Area 51 in 1951, which is why the base is called Area 51.
Oh.
And that inside the craft were humans who had been altered, surgically altered to look like aliens. in a plan for Stalin to sort of twist Truman's arm, because at that time, we had the atomic bomb. When Roswell happened, we had the atomic bomb, and the Soviets did not.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
When you say humans that were surgically altered to look like aliens, do you mean, so this is 1951, so you're talking about 4 years after the supposed crash?
Yes.
So what
They had
was
the bodies,
left?
they kept the bodies.
They kept the
brought them.
bodies. In what?
And-
Formaldehyde? Like what?
Yes. And also because the idea was, and remember, or I can't say remember because you haven't read the book yet.
Right.
And I wrote this book 8 years ago.
Mm.
But it did really impact a lot of my thinking and working on government secrecy projects, because it makes you really consider what a hoax means and what it means to a population of people, and how the government begins to work with disinformation versus cover stories and all of that. But going back to answer your question, if you follow the logic that my source told me, that these were, modified human beings as part of a hoax. And the reason that I trust the source is because, Joe, he told me that he also worked on the program. So he had like a burden to unload, right? And so if you follow that logic through, then the Bob Lazar story is that when Bob Lazar said, I saw an alien, it looked like this, it was small, it had big eyes. Those were those were the surgically modified humans that the government was doing experiments on. The source was a major player in the Manhattan Project. He went on and worked in the Atomic Energy Commission. I mean, there's a wing of a museum named after him. His accolades, his awards were so extraordinary. With a Q clearance, that's what you have when you have access to nuclear secrets. So if someone has a Q clearance for decades and they're full of garbage, you really have to ask, my God, should this guy have a Q clearance? I mean, that's reverse engineering his credibility. The book came out, his wife of 65 years knew it was him, okay? And I went out to Las Vegas and sat there in a room with the source and his wife. And she said, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you made this all up, to her husband. And he said, it's the truth. I mean, that's a triangular version of getting at the truth. But again, to reiterate, I believe he believes what he told me was the truth. That was the truth he was told. We met because I was interviewing nuclear weapons engineers who were setting off nuclear bombs in Area 51, in the Nevada test site, Area 12, Area 23. And they all said to me, you've got to talk to the top engineer of all this weaponry. And they gave me his name. And we talked for days and hours about nuclear weapons. And then, in one conversation, he began to cry and told me this story that I was like, what? He was crying because he participated in our version of the human experiments. Because what the Russians do, we do. According to him, we had a small program in 1951 where we wanted to see how the Russians did what they did, how they made human beings look like this. He said they were handicapped children. And he told me that he participated in this. So again, I mean, unless you have someone that lost their mind at age 90 and was willing to tell their wife of 65 years, I lost my mind. He had a grandchild that was born that way. And the grandchild did not live long. The grandchild died. And it made him feel so guilty about what he had done that he felt compelled to confess, if you will. And I remember saying to him, why are you telling me this? Why don't you tell a priest? And he said, a priest would judge me, and I can tell you won't.
At one time, I thought that there were, simply based upon documents that I'd seen while I was attached to the intelligence briefing team, the commander-in-chief of the Pacific Fleet. At that time, and even for many years afterwards, I did not believe that the government would use me in that way. I had devoted my whole life to government service. I had been in the Air Force, I was in the Navy, I was a river patrol boat captain in Vietnam, I had proved myself, I had combat ribbons with the V for valor. There was no doubt of my loyalty to my country. And maybe that's why it was so easy to use me, because I wouldn't doubt that what I saw was real. But over the years, I've done a lot of research. What I've discovered is there's no proof existing anywhere that extraterrestrials are real, or that have ever visited this planet, or that they exist anywhere in the universe. There is not one shred of evidence anywhere. There is lots of evidence, tons of it in fact, that there are a group of people collectively known as the Illuminati who want us to believe in some extraterrestrial threat from space so that they can cause a world government, bringing together of all the people to resist that external threat. The first time that I saw any reference to that, I was reading some papers from the Carnegie Endowment Fund, and there was a record of a speech. It was a dinner for Viscount 𝗧𝗍𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗍𝗹 of the Japanese delegation, the Japanese imperial delegation, in 1917. And John Dewey was one of the speakers. And the first sentence out of his mouth, as I was reading this, I almost fell out of my chair, because this was in 1917. And he said, the best way to cause all the people of the world to come together in one world government and end war forever would be if we were attacked by some other species from some other planet. And boy, that just clicked with me, and I knew that that this is just another scam. This is the age of deception. There's no doubt about it. And then 8 times during Reagan's administration, he inserted almost the exact same phrase into 8 of his speeches. And it's a scam. That's what I can tell you. What they call UFOs, these craft that fly around the sky, are real. But they're not piloted by some little green guy from some other planet. They're owned and operated by the United States of America for one, the Soviet Union for another, probably Great Britain, Canada. I think the first really operable ones were probably manufactured in Western Canada, in the wilderness, in a place especially built to create those machines, like we created the Manhattan Project, and the same kind of secrecy surrounded it.